I need you to hear this, and drop a comment if you've ever been blindsided at work. I never thought a single morning could turn my whole career upside down. My name is Alex, and I work at a mid-sized marketing agency in Dallas. My team is small but talented. There's me, my coworker and friend Rachel, who's ambitious but sometimes too competitive, and our manager, Tom, who's supportive but easily swayed by appearances. It all started with a single email I wasn't supposed to see. It was marked confidential and came from our department head to Rachel. I was just checking my inbox before grabbing coffee when my screen flashed. "Alex isn't delivering on the Henderson campaign. Consider reassigning his accounts." My stomach sank. I've been leading that client for nearly 6 months, and numbers don't lie. I couldn't believe Rachel would do something like this, but the email made it look convincing. My mind raced. Was this an honest critique, or a setup? I knew if I didn't act carefully, my reputation could tank before lunch. I glanced over at Rachel's desk. She was typing away, calm as ever. Could she really be plotting against me? I decided I had to gather evidence before confronting anyone. But what I found next would make me question everything about my team, and set the stage for the chaos that was about to unfold. After seeing that email, I decided to dig deeper without tipping anyone off. I started reviewing the Henderson campaign files and noticed small changes in shared documents, things I never made. Formulas in the budget spreadsheet had been altered, and some client emails were subtly edited. Whoever did this knew exactly how to avoid immediate detection, but I could see the pattern. Rachel suddenly started asking me unusually specific questions about deadlines and client preferences. At first, I thought she was just being helpful, but the timing felt off. Every time I tried to focus, she would hover nearby with that fake smile, casually dropping hints about mistakes I supposedly made. My anxiety grew. Every glance at her felt like a test. Meanwhile, Tom scheduled a surprise check-in with me. "We need to talk about Henderson's account," he said, looking concerned. My heart raced. Was he repeating what Rachel suggested, or had someone else raised concerns? I knew I couldn't show panic, so I calmly presented my recent metrics, but inside, I felt trapped. I started keeping a private log of everything: emails, Slack messages, minor edits, trying to connect the dots. That's when I noticed the first real anomaly. A file that only Rachel had access to appeared altered just hours before a client call. It was subtle, but it screamed sabotage. Little did I know, this was only the beginning, and the next move would escalate the pressure far beyond what I imagined. By midweek, the tension in the office had become almost unbearable. Every time I opened Slack, I double-checked who had edited what, and it felt like a game of cat and mouse. Rachel's questions became sharper, almost accusatory, framed as concerns about client satisfaction. I started noticing subtle comments from other team members, small remarks that hinted she might be influencing their opinions of me. Tom, usually easygoing, seemed distracted. During a team meeting, he mentioned the Henderson campaign numbers, asking for explanations that didn't make sense. My pulse quickened as I explained the data point by point, but the room felt colder than usual. I could feel the walls closing in, and the stress started affecting my focus. Mistakes I'd never make suddenly seemed possible under this constant scrutiny. To protect myself, I began saving time-stamped copies of every document and email. It felt paranoid, but I needed proof. One late afternoon, I discovered a Slack thread where Rachel had subtly suggested reassigning a client without naming me directly. The tone was casual, almost innocent, but it was enough to make the upper management consider it seriously if they saw it. I realized this wasn't just about one campaign anymore. This was about my career. And the next move? It would force me to step out of the shadows, confront the ambiguity, and decide how far I was willing to go to protect myself. By Thursday, I started piecing together what was really happening. Rachel's ambition was obvious, but there was more at play. I discovered subtle hints that Tom might have unknowingly been manipulated. Some of the concerns he raised mirrored exactly the talking points Rachel had shared in private conversations. It was as if she'd quietly planted seeds, letting him take the credit for discovering problems that didn't exist. I also noticed unusual behavior from other colleagues. Jamie from design started avoiding eye contact with me, and during casual lunch chatter, he dropped vague statements about office politics getting messy. It hit me, this wasn't just personal sabotage. Rachel was orchestrating a small office power play, and I was smack in the middle of it. Determined to get ahead, I began tracking the digital breadcrumbs, document edits, timestamps, Slack threads, and email forwards. The more I dug, the more intentional the pattern became. Someone had been quietly undermining me for weeks, and the Henderson campaign email was just the opening act. Yet, despite all this evidence, confronting Rachel directly felt risky. One wrong move, and I could appear paranoid or unprofessional. I realized I needed a plan, but first, I had to gather one final piece of proof. And the moment I found it, everything I thought I knew about my team, and my so-called friend, was about to be turned upside down. Friday morning arrived with a mix of dread and determination. I'd requested a small internal audit of the Henderson campaign files, nothing official yet, just enough to spot anomalies. I knew it could backfire, but I needed clarity. As I sifted through the audit logs, my eyes widened. Multiple edits to crucial spreadsheets had been made late at night, all traced back to Rachel's login credentials. It wasn't just subtle changes anymore. Some calculations had been intentionally misaligned, creating tiny errors that would look like my oversight to anyone reviewing the report. My stomach twisted. Rachel had been setting me up for weeks, and if Tom saw this without context, my position would be in serious jeopardy. I printed the logs, time-stamped and color-coded every suspicious entry. I even included annotations showing how these changes could be misinterpreted. This was my insurance, my shield, and my silent weapon. Yet the bigger shock came when I noticed one log entry that didn't make sense, an edit made from Tom's terminal after Rachel had supposedly left for the day. Could someone else be involved? Or had Tom unknowingly played a role in this setup? I knew I had to tread carefully. Any confrontation without a full picture could escalate things dangerously. The question now was, who could I trust, and how far would I have to go to uncover the truth? By Monday, the office atmosphere was electric. Every interaction felt like a test, every glance suspicious. Rachel's subtle digs continued, each one carefully timed to coincide with important client updates. Even casual hallway conversations made me second-guess myself. Was everyone in on it, or was it just my paranoia? Tom started scheduling more frequent check-ins, asking for updates on Henderson and other campaigns. He seemed sincere, but the questions often mirrored Rachel's earlier suggestions. I felt the pressure building. Every presentation, every email, had to be flawless. Mistakes weren't just embarrassing, they could be weaponized against me. Meanwhile, small incidents piled up. Files I was certain I saved in the morning appeared altered by the afternoon. Jamie from design continued acting strangely, sometimes hesitant to share key assets. Even HR seemed unusually attentive to minor discrepancies in my work logs. I realized that the network of influence Rachel had quietly built was bigger than I'd initially suspected. I started documenting everything meticulously, timestamps, screenshots, email chains, and Slack messages. It was exhausting, but I couldn't afford to miss anything. The walls were closing in, and the next twist would hit harder than anything I'd anticipated, threatening not just my job, but my professional reputation entirely. Just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, the real shock hit. Late Tuesday, I received an anonymous Slack message, "Check the backup server. You're not seeing the full picture." My heart raced. I had been focusing entirely on Rachel, but now it seemed there was another layer to this mess. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I accessed the backup server and found a series of archived documents I hadn't noticed before. Among them were emails and edits not just from Rachel, but also from someone using Tom's credentials. Suddenly, the careful web of manipulation revealed a larger, more troubling truth: Tom might have been unknowingly, or deliberately, involved. The messages implied that he had been forwarding client concerns to Rachel, who then positioned herself as the problem solver. If this pattern was true, it meant my manager wasn't entirely the ally I thought he was. Worse, it suggested a level of collusion that could threaten my career if left unchecked. I realized I was in deeper than I imagined. Rachel's ambitions were just one part of a bigger scheme, and every move I'd made so far was only scratching the surface. The question now wasn't just about proving sabotage, it was about figuring out who else was in the shadows, and how far they were willing to go. The next step would change everything, and I knew it. The fallout was coming faster than I could prepare for. The following day, I confronted the backup files again, piecing together a hidden trail of communication between Rachel and, surprisingly, a junior manager in another department. It seemed they'd been coordinating subtle nudges to influence Tom's decisions, all while keeping their involvement invisible. Every edited document, every carefully phrased email, had been part of a calculated plan. I couldn't believe how meticulous it was. The sheer effort it took to manipulate timelines, client updates, and internal reports was staggering. What's worse, some of the edits were flagged as coming from Tom's account, meaning if anyone checked superficially, it would look like he was questioning me, not Rachel orchestrating the scheme. I realized I had a small window to act. Gathering my compiled evidence, I considered how to expose the truth without appearing paranoid or accusatory. One wrong move could destroy relationships, reputations, or even my job. The stakes had never been higher. I started mapping out exactly who was involved, who could be trusted, and what leverage I had. This wasn't just about saving my role, it was about revealing a network of manipulation I hadn't anticipated. Comment prompt: have you ever uncovered hidden office secrets that shocked you? And just as I thought I had a plan forming, a new piece of evidence surfaced, one that would change everything I thought I knew about Rachel and Tom. With the new evidence in hand, I knew I had to be strategic. This wasn't about confrontation yet, it was about control. I started drafting a step-by-step approach to expose the manipulation without putting myself at risk. Every email, every Slack message, every document edit had to be organized and time-stamped. I mapped out the chain of events: Rachel's late-night edits, the junior managers coordinating messages, and the suspicious activity from Tom's account. I also considered the timing of when to present this evidence, ensuring it would have maximum impact. I couldn't let anyone preempt me. The plan wasn't just about revealing the truth, it was about protecting my reputation. I prepared a concise summary highlighting key anomalies, with supporting screenshots and audit logs. I also rehearsed how I would present it to Tom and HR without sounding accusatory, making it impossible for anyone to twist the narrative. Despite all the preparation, a knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. I realized this plan could backfire if anyone noticed my investigation too early. But I had reached a point where doing nothing was worse than risking exposure. The next day, I would begin executing my strategy, but before I could confront anyone, I had to make sure all the pieces were perfectly aligned. And the confrontation itself? It would be more intense than anything I'd met. Tuesday morning, I requested a private meeting with Tom and HR. My nerves were on edge, but I reminded myself that preparation was everything. I brought printed logs, screenshots, and a clear timeline of the edits, emails, and Slack messages. As soon as we sat down, Tom looked puzzled. "What's all this?" he asked. I calmly laid out the sequence of events, pointing to Rachel's late-night edits and the communications with the junior manager. HR listened closely, taking notes as I highlighted patterns of deliberate manipulation. Tom's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "I had no idea," he muttered, glancing at Rachel, who was now visibly tense. She tried to interject, but HR cut her off, asking for clarification on timestamps and sources. Every piece of evidence I had meticulously collected was airtight. I could feel the room's energy shift. Rachel attempted a weak denial, claiming misunderstandings, but the digital trail told a different story. The junior manager admitted to forwarding messages, citing pressure from Rachel, and even Tom acknowledged he hadn't realized his account was being used. By the time the meeting ended, HR promised a formal investigation. I felt a mix of relief and adrenaline. The confrontation was just the beginning, but I had managed to present the facts without losing credibility. Little did I know, the consequences of this meeting would ripple further than I anticipated. The next few days were intense. HR launched a formal review, interviewing team members and examining the digital evidence I had presented. Rachel was noticeably quieter, her usual confidence replaced with tension and guarded smiles. The junior manager admitted to following her instructions, and even Tom seemed uneasy, aware now of how he'd been manipulated without realizing it. Meanwhile, whispers circulated around the office. Colleagues who had seemed neutral started offering subtle support, acknowledging my diligence and professionalism. But the fallout wasn't just interpersonal, it was structural. Some client assignments were temporarily reassigned, pending a full audit, and I had to adjust quickly to maintain workflow while keeping my focus sharp. Despite the chaos, I felt a growing sense of vindication. Weeks of subtle sabotage and behind-the-scenes manipulation were now being documented and addressed. Yet the experience left me wary. The office, which once felt predictable, now seemed like a minefield of hidden agendas. Even as I settled into this new reality, I knew this was far from over. Rachel and her co-conspirators hadn't vanished, they were still part of the environment, and any misstep could reignite conflict. I realized I had to remain vigilant, balancing assertiveness with caution. The next phase would be about final resolutions, accountability, and uncovering the ultimate truths behind everyone's actions. By the end of the week, HR's investigation reached a turning point. All the evidence I'd compiled, combined with corroborating testimony from colleagues, painted a clear picture. Rachel had orchestrated the campaign of subtle sabotage, leveraging the junior manager and even unintentionally drawing Tom into her scheme. During a follow-up meeting, HR laid out the findings. Rachel tried to defend herself, insisting she had only been helping, but the trail of edits, timestamps, and communications told a different story. The junior manager admitted their role, explaining they felt pressured to follow her direction. Tom, meanwhile, expressed genuine surprise and regret for unknowingly participating. I felt a mix of relief and vindication. The truth was finally clear: I had not failed, nor had I overlooked mistakes. The sabotage had been real, intentional, and meticulously executed. The office hierarchy adjusted quickly. Rachel was formally reprimanded, the junior manager received a warning, and Tom committed to stricter oversight to prevent manipulation in the future. Reflecting on everything, I realized this experience had taught me key lessons about vigilance, documentation, and trust. While some relationships were irreparably damaged, others were strengthened by transparency and honesty. I also understood who had acted ethically, and who had crossed professional lines. The next steps would be rebuilding my reputation and maintaining a careful eye on future office dynamics, ensuring that such manipulation would never catch me off guard again. In the aftermath of the investigation, the office slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but nothing felt quite the same. I focused on rebuilding relationships with colleagues who had stayed neutral or supportive. There were cautious conversations, new boundaries, and a shared understanding that trust now had to be earned, not assumed. Tom became more attentive, genuinely checking in on team members without letting external influence sway his judgment. I appreciated the shift. His oversight was now more transparent, creating a safer environment for everyone. Meanwhile, Rachel was noticeably sidelined, assigned tasks under close supervision. The junior manager maintained a low profile, clearly shaken by their complicity. I took the opportunity to refine my own work processes, implementing more thorough documentation and backup practices to protect myself in the future. It wasn't just about avoiding sabotage, it was about staying organized, proactive, and resilient in the face of office politics. Despite everything, there was a sense of empowerment. I realized that surviving this challenge had strengthened my ability to navigate complex professional dynamics. It wasn't just about proving who was wrong, it was about understanding the value of careful observation, timing, and integrity in the workplace. Even as things settled, I knew vigilance was key, and the lessons from this experience would influence how I approached collaboration, trust, and accountability moving forward. The final revelations and moral of this ordeal were still to come. Looking back, I realized the ordeal had taught me more than just about workplace sabotage, it had reshaped how I approached collaboration, trust, and professional integrity. Documentation, careful observation, and timing had been my tools for survival, and they proved indispensable. I also learned to read between the lines of everyday interactions. Subtle comments, edits, and even body language can carry hidden meanings in a high-stakes office environment. Understanding motives and patterns became as important as executing tasks flawlessly. Tom's unintended role in the scheme reminded me that even well-meaning managers can be manipulated, and transparency in communication is vital. Meanwhile, witnessing Rachel's ambition spiral into unethical behavior showed the consequences of prioritizing personal gain over team cohesion. I made mental notes for the future: always maintain evidence of work, build relationships based on honesty, and stay vigilant without letting paranoia take over. These lessons weren't theoretical, they were born from experience, and they would guide every decision I made moving forward. Even as the office slowly regained balance, I knew vigilance remained essential. One lapse could undo months of careful work, but now I felt better equipped to handle challenges, subtle or overt, with clarity and confidence. The final chapter, karma, accountability, and reflection, was ready to unfold. Weeks later, the consequences of the sabotage fully played out. Rachel faced formal disciplinary action, including a performance improvement plan and closer oversight. The junior manager learned a hard lesson about accountability and influence, while Tom adjusted his management approach to prevent similar issues in the future. The office gradually stabilized, and my reputation emerged intact, bolstered by thorough documentation and a calm, strategic response. Reflecting on the experience, I understood that karma isn't always instant, but it's inevitable. Actions driven by manipulation and ambition at the expense of integrity eventually come to light. The ordeal reinforced the importance of professionalism, careful observation, and persistence in protecting one's work and career. I also realized the value of allies. Colleagues who stayed neutral or supportive became essential in navigating the fallout. Trust is earned, vigilance is necessary, and transparency can be a powerful shield in the workplace. Most importantly, I recognize that challenges like these, though stressful, can strengthen resilience, sharpen judgment, and provide lessons that extend far beyond the office walls.